Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the Bring the Sink podcast. I'm your host, The Hammer, and we got a good one for you today. Since I really couldn't come up with a single thing to talk about, I decided I'm going to have my listeners submit in questions, and I'm going to answer them for a little Q&A for episode 13 of Bring the Sink. So let's get right into it. I gave my listeners the option as to whether or not they could remain anonymous, or if they would like a shout out, I can go ahead and shout out them now. So without further ado, I'm going to start out with my main man, Dylan. And he asked me a couple of questions, or he actually asked me one question. He said to slide right into under the deadline, because I gave everybody a deadline, because I gotta record at some point, you know what I mean? But he said, who is the biggest what if going from college to the NFL? Now, there's a lot of what ifs, but when he threw in that going from college to the NFL, that actually gave me a more precise way of looking at this question, because there's a lot of what ifs, like, what if they traded for this guy? What if they signed this guy? What if this guy didn't get injured? There's a lot of what ifs, and I'm pretty sure I've covered a few of them. But the biggest what if coming in from college, there's a few that I could go with. I could go with Johnny Manziel. Coming out of Texas A&M, getting drafted to the Browns, and obviously didn't really work out there. I could talk about Tavon Austin and how explosive he was and how he was never really utilized correctly. And kind of going back to Johnny Manziel, I guess the reason why I don't want to pick him as my number one answer is because I think the writing was on the wall for Johnny Manziel. I think there was a lot of foundational issues behind the scenes that kind of made it impossible for him to succeed at the NFL level unless he really cleaned it up. And then again, even if he did clean it up, he probably wouldn't have been the same player going into the NFL, because he played so well when he wasn't cleaned up. You know what I mean? So some people can just function when they can function better, quote unquote, when they're intoxicated, and I guess that's what Johnny Manziel was doing back in Texas A&M, and he has a whole documentary on Netflix if you guys want to watch and see for yourselves the details of how intoxicated he truly was during his short tenure in Texas A&M. So that's why I'm not going to pick Johnny Manziel, but I think Johnny Manziel is definitely a very curious case nonetheless. Tavon Austin, that's not going to be my pick either, because he was dominating at a collegiate level, but it's like that college that he went to wasn't necessarily the greatest college ever, and they weren't necessarily playing like the greatest competition either. So that's not something I'm going to discuss any further than I've already discussed it now. Now, the two main answers that I want to give, I want to throw it back to about 2005, 2006, and I want to talk about Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush, he got drafted by the New Orleans Saints, and he was never really utilized to his fullest potential by Sean Payton, the New Orleans Saints, because he was put into that two running back system that Sean Payton loves to use and has continued to use pretty much his entire career, and he had to split the carries with Deuce McAllister, and Deuce McAllister, for all intents and purposes, was actually the number one back, and he was kind of just the third down back, and kind of like that gadget guy. He came in, he caught a few passes, and it seemed like every time he touched the ball, he made plays. But that wasn't enough for Sean to make him the number one guy. And unfortunately, these running backs, they kind of have a short lifespan. So even though you're getting all those hits and you're not really getting all the carries, I think if he was to go somewhere that actually utilized him to his fullest potential, I think he could have definitely been one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game of football. That's a hammer hot take right there, because I personally, watching Reggie Bush in college, guy, nobody could tackle him. He was amazing. It was one of the most athletic feats that you could ever lay your eyes on a football field. I think Reggie Bush has to be my number one answer. To kind of go along with that same theme of that same time period, Vince Young. Vince Young was drafted by a team that kind of didn't really like him. The owners liked him a lot, but Jeff Fisher did not like him one bit. And so there was always kind of a tussle over him. And I think if he was thrown into a supporting cast that actually, supported him and actually, wanted him there, I think Vince Young could have definitely done some damage in the league for sure. And I also want to give an honorable mention to Jamarcus Russell, because I know, Jamarcus Russell is kind of considered one of, if not the biggest bust of all time. But I watched a mini documentary on Jamarcus Russell the other day, and he was pretty much saying how as soon as he got drafted, he was dealing with all sorts of personal struggles and mental health. His uncle died, and then his mental health kind of deteriorated after his uncle died, which led him into poor coping mechanisms such as, drugs and alcohol, and he gained a lot of weight. He started stress eating, and then, if you know anything about mental health, is like, so if you're struggling with mental health, your work ethic kind of tanks. So that's why, you hear all those stories about him getting the blank tapes and then him coming back and telling them that it was blitz packages and stuff like that. I'm not going to say Jamarcus Russell's my number one answer, or is that he's like the biggest what if, but if he was, it just wasn't meant to be at the end of the day, and that's just what you kind of have to leave it at, because if he wasn't drafted to the Raiders, which has kind of perennially been a shitty organization since the 90s or 80s, if he was drafted to the right situation, obviously if his family situation wasn't all that bad, if he didn't go through that like depressive episode, and if his mental health was able to stay up there, or if he was able to figure out like healthy coping mechanisms, he could have, I think he definitely could have done something, but it all comes down to you and your work ethic and how you cope with problems in your life. Everybody has their fair share of problems, so that's why I'm not going to say Jamarcus Russell's like the biggest what if, but I just wanted to give him a shout out. Now the next question comes from a guy who wanted to remain anonymous. He said, "Is Jay Cutler or quarterbacks like him or Donovan McNabb a Hall of Famer?" And the short answer is no. But the long answer is I put these guys in the hall of very good. At their peak, Donovan McNabb, Jay Cutler at their peak, especially Donovan McNabb. Jay Cutler, I don't think the best version of Jay Cutler and the best version of Donovan McNabb are even close to each other, in all honesty. I think Donovan McNabb was an elite quarterback at some point in his career. But these guys, they're in the Hall of Very Good because at their best, at their peak, they were probably top 7 quarterbacks, top 10 for sure. And they were guys that their teams really counted on, and sometimes that worked out, sometimes it didn't. But it's really, really hard to remain good at that level for a very long time. And unfortunately, they did not remain very good for a very long time, but they were good at some point. You know what I mean? So that's why the short answer is no. That's why I don't think they're Hall of Famers, but I do have them in my Hall of Very Good. And maybe I'll make a short episode about that in the near future, about my Hall of Very Good, because man, I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel. If you guys have any topics that you would like to suggest, please let me know now, because the schedule is coming out, so the schedule is something that I might have to talk about. I did have to record an episode before Friday, because Friday is when the Drake album comes out, and I don't want you guys, listening to me or like having to compete with either me or Drake. Like, you guys do your thing, you guys listen to whoever you want, but I'm not trying to compete with that right now. So I knew I had to release an episode at least a few days prior. So but yeah, those guys are in my Hall of Very Good. Now the next question is from my boy Bill. Shout out to Bill, holding it down in Orlando. He says, this is actually kind of I don't even know if this is a question or if this is a topic that he wants me to discuss, but he goes, "The debate between Guardian Caps and their proven effects at reducing head impacts and concussions versus the common opinion from fans and players that they look stupid. Period. With studies showing that a 54 to 62% chance, or 54 to 62% reduction in concussions and a 10 to 20% reduction in head acceleration or impact forces, it should be a no-brainer. No pun intended." And plus an extreme reduction in quote-unquote just barely under a concussion hits in blocking positions like linemen, tight ends, and linebackers. He says, can't remember if you covered this or not, but if you did, feel free to dump this. If not, please go in depth. So your wish is my command, Bill. Yeah, I mean, I haven't honestly really given this much thought. It does look stupid. Don't get me wrong. It's never gonna not look stupid unless, like, I guess everybody wears them and then like 10 years goes by and then you kind of just forget how the old helmets even looked. I don't know, man. I mean, if these numbers are real and it's a 54 to 62% reduction in concussions and a 10 to 20% reduction of head acceleration, then I'm all for it, man. It's all good for me, man. Who am I to judge? Even if it does look stupid, your health is the number one thing. Who cares if it looks stupid? You're playing this game for a lot of money, but you're putting your body on the line. And at the end of the day, it's just a game. You know what I mean? It's just play. So I don't think anything or any amount of money is worth your health or, sacrificing your body. Especially for entertainment purposes. If this was like actual like warfare for a good cause or something, that's kind of different. That's kind of like a form of. I'm not even gonna get into that, but like, this is like, it's just a game, man. So like, whatever you got to do to keep yourself safe, obviously that's why they wear the helmets in the first place. That's why they wear the pads in the first place. It's like, it's not just to make them look cool. It's to help them stop injuring all their bones and their shoulders and their tendons and all that stuff. So I'm all for it. I do acknowledge that it does look kind of stupid, but if you're going to be one to wear it, you shouldn't care about that, because at the end of the day, you're protecting your body. And if you're protecting your body and you're playing at a high level, then you're making even more money for you, your family, for your generation, for your grandkids, your great grandkids, you know what I mean? So that I think that's an easy decision for me. It's I think the actual effectiveness of protecting your health matters way, way more than just looking cool. It's like the people who ride motorcycles, and my guy who asked me this question, Bill, he rides motorcycles too. So this is kind of right up his alley. But if you're riding a motorcycle and you think it's cooler to ride without a helmet, like, I'm sorry, you're just dumb. Maybe it does look cooler. Who knows, especially what kind of helmet you have. But like, you gotta wear a helmet at the end of the day, or like people who like drive around without a seatbelt because like they don't feel like doing that, or it looks lame or something. It's like, you gotta wear a seatbelt, man. Come on now. Yeah, for me it's a no-brainer. Like Bill says, no pun intended. That's my view on that. My next question comes from my boy Jack. Shout out my guy Jack, holding it down in Littleton, Colorado. He is asking me, is Bo Nix's ankle a concern for next season? No, I don't think so. It's an ankle. God forbid. I don't want to like say anything that's like that makes it worse or anything like that. God forbid. Let's all be optimistic here. There's nothing that you can accomplish from being negative. You know what I mean? If you're feeling bad throughout the entire offseason, what is there to look forward to? So just for the entertainment factor and just to keep my mental health at an all-time high, I think I am not concerned about Bo Nix's ankle. Plus he posted a video of himself running on a football field just a week or two ago, so that's obviously a good sign, at least I think. So yeah, shout out Jack for that question. My next question is from Evan. Evan says, is Mahomes going to be healthy enough for the season opener against the Broncos? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think we really have a choice. It's not like, or I don't think he has a choice really, because it's like, you're going to open up the season in Kansas City and you're not going to be there. You're going to subject us to watch Justin Fields versus Bo Nix. Like, come on, man. Like, we need Bo Nix versus Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean? So also, I'm sorry if this kind of gets choppy, but I accidentally clicked the stop recording on my last take, so I was like, man, I hate when that happens. I hope I don't run into any technical difficulties regarding this. So but yeah, thank you for the question, Evan, but I don't personally think Mahomes' ACL injury will be a problem going into the season opener. I mean, these guys, the modern medicine these days, man, these guys, they're all good, man. It's like these ACLs heal in record time. You know, remember when Rodgers tore his Achilles back in a season opener when he first signed with the Jets, and you know, he was getting ready for a comeback in the same season. And that's what, 12, 13, 14 weeks later. If they were making a run at the playoffs, he was going to come back that season. He was good enough. And if you watch that Rodgers documentary, you know, he said that he was good enough to return at the end of the year, but they didn't want to rush him back into it because it was kind of pointless. You know, there was nothing to play for at that point in time. So yeah, I think Mahomes will, unless he suffers some major setback, I think he will absolutely be back next for the season opener next year. On to the next question. We got Giuseppe G from Tampa. He asks, will the Giants or the Raiders have a better season next year? Oh man, I haven't even really given this much thought for either team, really. I don't want to dig myself into a hole because I'm trying to remember what I said in the last episode or the episode prior, where I was talking about both of these teams and how good/bad their draft classes were. So, I mean, even with the draft classes being the way they were, and I'm also kind of biased as a Broncos fan too, you know. But like the Raiders made a lot of moves, you know, and but so did the Giants. The Giants got a new head coach. I mean, so did the Raiders. Gosh, you guys are hearing me think about this in real time, because I got this question earlier and then I just completely forgot about it, and I was like, oh wait, what did Giuseppe say? So shout out to Giuseppe, man. I think the Giants are going to have a better season next year, and not by much. They might have a same season. You know, I know that's kind of sitting on the fence, but I think the Giants will have a better season next year. I think first of all, the AFC West is a gauntlet. You know, you got to play the Chiefs twice, you got to play the Broncos twice, you got to play the Chargers twice if you're the Raiders. You know, so those are all teams that you could very well lose to, and have lost to last year. So you know, I think, yeah, I don't know if all the moves were enough for the Raiders for me to take them over the Giants. Now the Giants, they got a quarterback who is really fun to watch with Jackson Dart. They got Malik Neighbors hopefully coming back fully healthy this year. They got John Harbaugh, Cam Scatterbo. They added some additions to their D line and it was not even a weakness of theirs, but they added some additions. They did lose Dexter Lawrence, but yeah, you know, I think playing against Washington Commanders, Dallas Cowboys, and then of course, you know, Philly's going to be Philly, but I just think that NFC East might be slightly easier than the AFC West, at least at this point in time. So yeah, give me the Giants, and I just think the NFC in general, I think is well, I don't know if I want to say that right now. I was gonna say the NFC is easier than the AFC, but I'll have to give that more thought. But yeah, at least for right now, I'm gonna say the Giants are gonna have a better season than the Raiders, and I kind of hope that to be true too, because I don't want the Raiders to be good ever in my entire life. Let's see. Next question, we got Anonymous saying, which current playoff team is most likely to miss the playoffs next year? Oh man, you know, I could go the easy route and say Carolina Panthers. I could say the Packers. They didn't really do much over the offseason, and they didn't fire LaFleur either. So, you know, this is a good question too, man. You guys are hitting me with some hard questions. But I also think the Patriots could have a very solid chance of missing the playoffs too. You know, Mike Vrabel is currently undergoing a lot of scandals right now, both on and off the field, or I guess just mostly off the field. You know, Drake May kind of outperformed or overperformed all expectations, so hopefully he can come back down to earth next year. You know, they lost a couple of guys. They didn't really add a whole lot of talent. They had a good draft, but they didn't really add a whole lot of talent. Yeah, I could very well see the Patriots. I could see the Steelers missing the playoffs, especially going into year 57 with Aaron Rodgers. They replaced Mike Tomlin with Mike McCarthy. Don't get me wrong, I think Mike McCarthy's a good coach. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think, yeah, definitely the Patriots, the Steelers. The Chargers could definitely slip up, but the Chargers also did sign David Njoku, so they are looking like they're stacking the deck too. And their O-line might come back healthier this year, or at least should come back healthier this year. So Chargers, if the Chiefs wake up. I think those are my go-tos. Panthers, Packers, the NFC. AFC is Patriots and Steelers. So those are like my four final answers right now. My next question coming from Alan. He says, what is more important, a elite quarterback or an elite head coach? And I think this is actually a very easy question for me. I think an elite quarterback by far is more important, at least to like raise the floor for your team. You know what I mean? Like a good coach or a great coach raises the ceiling, raises the expectations, but like a good a great quarterback raises the floor. There is a certain level of this that, or I don't even know if that's a real word, but there's a certain level that's just totally unacceptable to ever go down to if you're an elite quarterback. And for an elite head coach, there's a lot of excuses as to why you could reach that level. So just think about it for a second. Like Tom Brady. If obviously he had Bill Belichick all his life, but if Tom Brady goes 4-12 or 4-13 these days, that's totally unacceptable. That's not something you can really make an excuse for Tom Brady. But if Bill Belichick goes 4-13, you could say, oh, there was no talent. There was, he didn't have any help. Those players couldn't execute the game plan. Or I'll give you another example. Sean McVay. There's been years where he hasn't done all that hot. It's not like he's always had Super Bowl caliber teams. But now with Matt Stafford at the helm, Matt Stafford has transformed that team to always be Super Bowl contenders as long as that team remains healthy. You know what I mean? So it raises the floor. Now, I'll give you another example. So Sean Payton, I know some people don't consider him an elite coach, and that's absolutely crazy to me. That's absolutely diabolical. But Sean Payton, he first comes into town, he inherits Russell Wilson. Obviously, Russell Wilson's not an elite quarterback, and I don't think anybody can argue that right now. Russell Wilson's not an elite quarterback, and then they end up going, was it 7-10 or 8-9, and they missed the playoffs, and they lost some games at the end that were despicable, and they were games that they should not have lost. In comes Bo Nix. Bo Nix, right out of the gate, was not an elite quarterback either, but he was moldable. He was still young. He could still learn a game plan. And Sean Payton kind of molds him into his guy, and Sean Payton takes a rookie quarterback to the playoffs. A team that hasn't reached the playoffs since 2015 makes it with a rookie quarterback because of an elite head coach. So that's why I'm saying, like, a head coach, an elite head coach, he can't force you to go to the water. And an elite quarterback will take you to the water, but an elite head coach will motivate you to drink that water, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think of another example. All right. My final example, and this is kind of another hometown example. So we got the Broncos back in 2014. Ever since they signed Peyton Manning, like I said, elite quarterbacks are forced, or not forced, but they lead their horses to the water. That's what the elite quarterbacks do. So when they sign Peyton Manning, they immediately start winning 12, 13 games. Anything below is completely unacceptable by Peyton Manning standards. In 2014, the Broncos, I believe, win 12 games. They get the 2 seed. At that point in time, the 2 seed had the bye. I know it's different now, but there was only 6 teams that made the playoffs, and the 2 seed had the bye. So in the divisional round of the playoffs, they're playing against the Indianapolis Colts, Andrew Luck. And the Indianapolis Colts come into Denver, and they totally shock the world, and they beat Denver. Only to get absolutely blown out by the Patriots the next week in the AFC Championship, it was like 55-10 or whatever it was. So obviously that team had no business beating the Denver Broncos, especially with an all-time great like Peyton Manning. Where was the problem, you ask? It was with John Fox. John Fox was the problem. John Fox is not necessarily a bad coach, but he's not an elite head coach. And when they brought in Gary Kubiak that next year, you could totally see that the culture had changed so much and the players were playing motivated for Gary Kubiak. There was a huge culture shift. There was people liked playing in Denver. They wanted to play for Denver when Gary Kubiak was the coach. Hell, Gary Kubiak almost led the Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch led Broncos to the playoffs. That's how important Gary Kubiak was to the Broncos at that point in time. So that's why I believe an elite quarterback is more important than an elite head coach. An elite head coach can only do so much with the talent surrounding him, but an elite quarterback raises that expectation. I guess they're both kind of yin and yang at the end of the day, and if you have both, you're probably winning at least a Super Bowl, if not more. But if I had to pick between an amazing head coach and a solid quarterback, or an amazing quarterback and a solid head coach, give me the amazing quarterback and the solid head coach 10 times out of 10. And I hope that makes sense. I think we have time for one more question, unless one of my friends finally decides to text me back, but it doesn't really sound. I'm not terribly optimistic right now, so we'll see. Yeah, so my last question is, which NFL stadium would you most want to visit? And this is actually a great question. This person wanted to remain anonymous, but this is actually a great question because I haven't thought about this in the slightest degree. Like, I have never thought about going to a different NFL stadium. Like, obviously, I've gone to a lot of Broncos games, and I love going to the Broncos games, and I would like to go to more Broncos games. I've been to a lot, but I'd always like to go to more. You know, it's a great time going to those games. But man, like, what NFL stadium would I like to go to? You know, it kind of depends. Like, I would love to go to Lumen Field. Is that what it's called now? Is Lumen Field in or CenturyLink or whatever? I think it's called Lumen now. Out in Seattle. I want to see how loud that 12th man is, especially now that they just won a Super Bowl. You know, all the fair weather fans are going to be packed into the stadiums again. I've always thought that Gillette Stadium in New England, I thought that was a really cool, really nice design, especially with, like, if there's like a blizzard outside, you know, like there's just some vibes, you know, and they got the lighthouse over there too, like that's cool. Obviously, I would love to go down to Jerry's World, down to Arlington, Texas, and see the Dallas Cowboys. I think that would be a lot of fun too. The Acrisure Stadium out in Pittsburgh is a classic. Lambeau Field, I can't believe I haven't said that one yet. Lambeau Field for sure. Soldier Field out in Chicago, especially now that they're probably going to replace it. It's like, man, you got to get out there at least once, you know. I don't really have any desire to go out to Arrowhead. I think that's, I don't know, that's too deep into enemy territory. Although, speaking of enemy territory, I would love to see a Broncos game in Vegas against the Raiders. That kind of seems like a tourist attraction of sorts. So I think that would be cool. I'm trying to think, like the Raymond James Stadium out in Tampa would be cool. There's like, I know you guys probably think I'm naming every single stadium, but like I am purposefully not naming some specific stadiums. So if you have a good ear, you probably have heard like the stadiums that I haven't mentioned so far. Oh, that new stadium that the Vikings have though, man, that one, it's like super high tech. That one looks cool. I think the US Bank Field or whatever. SoFi Stadium for a Rams game specifically, not a Chargers game. Although it could, for a Chargers game, if it's a Broncos-Chargers game, it would probably just be another home game for the Broncos. So I think, actually, I take that back. Yeah, for a Chargers game, I think that would be kind of cool. You know, and this is actually going to sound funny, but that Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, that one, for some reason, has like the best LED lights. And it's so bright. And like I love seeing something like that, you know, like their color scheme and like how bright the lights are, you know, like I feel like I could definitely enjoy a game out at Lucas Oil Stadium for sure. So yeah, I think those are my picks, and you know, just a one-time check just to make sure my friend did not text me back. All right, Cool. Well, that is it. So sad, and there's a couple of people that I'm waiting on responses from, and I did text my dad, and he told me he was gonna get me a question in, and but he's in France right now, and at the time of recording, I think it's like 3 in the morning. So I will make sure to answer his question along with my friends' questions if they respond to me too late at the time of the ending of this recording. I'll be sure to answer my dad's question and my friend's recordings, or my friend's questions for the next episode. But the next episode won't be solely a Q&A. This was just kind of a creative idea, because like I said before, I truly had no idea what to freaking talk about, man. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been episode 23 of Bring the Sink. Be sure to tune in next week for some more, and peace!